Hi, everyone. March 29th, Tuesday devotion for West Hills Church. Pastor Scott here. Hey, wanted to follow up a little bit with our Isaiah message from this Sunday. Really, that whole idea that we looked in Isaiah chapter 9, chapter 10, where God just like, I'm not going to put up with you being self-exalting. I'm not going to put up with you thinking that, okay, things may get torn down, but we'll build it back better ourselves because of just this lack of humility, this pride that they have. And in light of that, what does God really want us to be like? Well, we know this, but we have to remind ourselves all the time. As one person said to me on Sunday, I got to remind myself humility, humility, humility. Matthew 20, 26 through 27, Jesus says it this way: whoever wishes to become great among you should be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be your slave. There's a Bible commentator that said this: great men are not sitting on top of lesser men, but bearing lesser men on their backs. They're serving them. Jesus would agree with that type of statement there. Um, the standards of usefulness for us as we are living for Him really are much more demanding than the world's ideas, because the world's all about self-serving, kind of a domineering type of lifestyle or leadership. Paul lists the high standards that God has given, for example, for church leaders in 1 Timothy 3 1 through 7. And God considers men great who are among those willing to be servants. So Matthew 20, 26 and 27, Jesus is speaking of genuine servanthood, not a public servant who merely uses a position to gain power or prestige. The original word for servant refers to a person who did menial labor, was kind of the lowest kind of hired help. And Jesus could have used a more noble word to mean being obedient and discipleship, but he picked this one, and that's really the word what we get deacon from, because it best describes the selfless humility of those who are to be serving, to be leaders. And Jesus intensifies that then with not just saying servant, but slaves. If we want to be great in his kingdom, we are called to be slaves. So servants have some level of personal freedom. Slaves, no, they didn't. They were owned by their masters and only could go and do what the masters wanted them to do. And the application for us as believers is that whether we live or die, whatever we do, we're supposed to be doing for the Lord, because we are the Lord's. Romans 14:8. If you desire real growth spiritually, real spiritual um, greatness, for lack of a better term, you're going to end up being willing to work in a hard place, a lot of times a lonely place, a place that you didn't even think would ever be possible sometimes. You'll be willing to strive for excellence in that without being proud, and endure suffering and not being into a self pity party. It's godly attitudes of servanthood, of being willing to be all of Christ for Him alone. And that's when Jesus says, well done, good and faithful servant or slave. Enter into the joy of your master. So we need to always ask God for help cultivating our servant's heart. I don't want to be like what we saw in Isaiah with the covenant people in Israel during that time frame. I want to be what Christ wants me to be, and that is to be a humble servant. And so we need to always work on that in our lives. Okay? God bless everyone. We'll see you Thursday night and next Sunday.